Hello, Oklahoma Sooners fans and college football fans. Welcome into Oklahoma at the Voice of College Football on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Josh Mahler. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Real Josh Mahler, to keep up with this show and all the work that I do covering the Oklahoma Sooners and so much more. And of course, follow the Voice of College Football over on social media to keep up with everything that we've got going here on this network. If you're a college football fan that likes to keep up with all things college football, everything in the league, this is the place to go. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, give us a 5-star review. That is the best way to help us on those platforms and help us grow. But let's go ahead and dive into it because some big news, moderately big news here in this last week for the Oklahoma Sooners has gone down. A lot of people kind of confused by this first one, and I'll go ahead and mention this one first, and it is that Oklahoma has now added some depth at the QB position. They've added a little bit of depth and added a new QB to their roster, and this comes as a sign of confusion for many Oklahoma fans. They look at this and say, why would we go for this guy? Why would we add another QB to the roster at all? Does this mean that maybe we lost a guy going forward? Maybe we lost a recruit, or maybe Oklahoma lost, one of the guys that are on the roster now. That's not the case. It might play into some of that, might play into it, but for the most part, this is just adding depth to the overall depth for your quarterbacks. And it was a Norman, Oklahoma native, Gavin Frakes, who ended up deciding to come and sign with the Oklahoma Sooners. And, he does have a couple of years of eligibility left. He first committed to Princeton. So first, I want to start off by saying this, just to throw out his stature. He is a 6'4", 232-pound quarterback. That alone says quite a bit. He does come from Norman North High School and committed to Princeton in his senior year coming out of high school, but then ended up ultimately signing with New Mexico State. He played 11 games as a freshman, including 5 starts there. But, a name that we're pretty familiar with in college football, maybe not all of us, is Diego Pavia, a man that kind of blew up on the scene last season. Diego Pavia is actually the quarterback that came in and took that starting position from Gavin Frakes. So kind of interesting to kind of see his background, where he comes from, piecing it together with other guys like Diego Pavia. And the offensive coordinator, whose name I'm drawing a blank on, who also went over to Vanderbilt, was there at New Mexico State at the time. But of course, due to no playing time, he ended up going over to Virginia. And of course, due to no more playing time, once again, he ended up transferring this year. He didn't play at all in 2024. So he ended up coming over to Oklahoma. Ultimately, when I look at this, a lot of Oklahoma fans kind of questioning why he would decide to leave. Maybe they don't like the fact that he's complaining that just because he doesn't get to see the field, he's going to leave and pack his bags. And that is a part of college football that many of us, especially if many of us traditionalists, might not really like. We might look at that and just kind of, it annoys us to see players constantly leaving their teams and going to 3 or 4 different teams throughout their collegiate career. And I understand that. I empathize with that 100%. But, at the same time, if you're not going to be seeing the field, why not sit on the bench for Oklahoma in your hometown? I think that plays quite a bit into it from what I understand. I haven't heard it from the mouth of Gavin Frakes or anything like that, but I would imagine that that's got to go into it. The fact that he's from Norman, he went to Norman North High School. Come back to Oklahoma. If you're going to sit on the bench in college football, why not do it at, for one, a great college and get to learn outside of that and have a good time and be around other great competition. And who knows what that could do for you. And on top of that, just coming back home and being around in your hometown. His stats overall, he's thrown 50% on 110 attempts. Not great, but 50% is right about that mark where it's like, okay, we can work with something here. So 110 total attempts in college football, 763 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Again, you'll probably hear me say this plenty. The most important stat for a quarterback to have, in my opinion, is that touchdown to interception ratio. And that's terrible. You put the ball in the other team's hands almost twice as many times as you put it in the end zone through the air. Just throwing that out there. I don't like that stat. on this stat sheet. That's the stat that I pay attention to the most with quarterbacks. How well are you at putting the ball in the end zone more than giving it away? That is very important, obviously, for many obvious reasons. He's also got 143 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. So nothing really much to speak of. Like I said, this isn't like they added a piece that they think will compete in the fall. It's not like he's a guy that's going to be taking John Mateer's place, or maybe that Michael Hawkins is indicating that he wants to leave, or it could play into the fact that Oklahoma is currently in a little bit of a battle. They're trying to keep Jaden O'Neal, who the more I see, the more I feel like maybe he's just losing interest in Oklahoma, which I really hope is not the case. But Oklahoma's trying really hard to make sure that they can keep Jaden O'Neal because they went after another guy. And I believe that was Bo Bentley, if I remember correctly. But I'm speaking off the top of my head there, not anything that I've got down in my notes. So it could be that that's why they're adding another guy that, hey, at least if he were to stick around next year, that's one more guy that we've got in our depth next year. It could be playing chess. It could also just be that he showed interest and they said, yeah, let's add a guy that's got starting experience. Now adding, let's see, we've got Michael Hawkins Jr., you've got John Mateer, and then you've also got, Gonzalez ended up leaving. And so now you bring in, you bring in Gavin Frakes, and then there's a fourth on there that we just pulled in as well. So you've got 4 guys now with starting experience on your roster. That's something good to look at and to recognize that, hey, even if it's not anything uh, extremely valuable at starting experience, it's not like he went out there and threw a lot of touchdowns. It's not like he put up a lot of yards and showed something special. Maybe that's not the case, but at least he's got that starting experience under his belt. So that is something for the Oklahoma Sooners that we've seen this past week. Another kind of pretty big news. I think this is big news when you talk about recruiting. And I know it's 2026, since we've got some time before they actually commit. He might not commit. A lot of these guys may not give their verbal commitments for a little while, but on top of that, they may not ever actually sign the papers and actually decide to go to Oklahoma, even if they did verbally commit. So I understand all of that concern, but getting the recruits, it's a long, tedious process, and Oklahoma has now drawn in and scheduled a 4-star running back for an official visit, which is very big, and his name is DeZephen Walker. DeZephen Walker, he's 6 foot, 205 pounds, kind of a big, tough guy. He comes from Raymore Peculiar High School in Raymore, Missouri. He canceled his trip to Notre Dame in order to come to Norman instead. So that's very big news. The fact that he's wanting to cancel, not just cancel a visit, but cancel a very big name visit. And especially when you talk about running backs, Notre Dame has some good running backs. They've had good running backs over the year. They've got a history in building those guys up. So the fact that he's willing to cancel an official visit to Notre Dame of all teams, it's not like he's canceling a visit to Rice. He's canceling a visit to a pretty big school. So that's some big news, some good news to see that, and that could lean towards Oklahoma's favor, the fact that he's willing to do that. But they end up getting him in as an official visit, and scheduled that visit. He mentioned to OU Insider in an interview that DeMarco Murray playing in the NFL was a big thing, along with the storied running back history at Oklahoma. He mentioned guys like Adrian Peterson. And so, that's something to look at. Seeing Oklahoma's history that drew a guy like this in, a 4-star running back. And he also mentioned that Oklahoma, he mentioned how much Oklahoma being in the SEC added to his decision and really played a factor in this decision to schedule a visit and why he's looking at Oklahoma. This is something that Oklahoma fans were kind of told would happen in the SEC, that whenever you get here, it's going to recruit for itself. That SEC patch on your shoulder will recruit for itself. And we haven't really seen that too much yet, at least not out of the mouths of the recruits. We haven't seen a whole lot of it, but it's there. So that's something to look at and recognize that being in the SEC is going to help recruiting more as time goes on. Just having that SEC patch on your shoulder helps in recruiting, and it's coming to fruition now as we see this here with DeZephen Walker. And especially if the Sooners are able to turn things around and get back on track and start to win and show some success within the conference. You're going to see that even more as time goes on, as Oklahoma keeps on improving, and hopefully that's the case. Right, as an Oklahoma fan, we can hope that that's the trajectory that they're going to. He's already spoke to GM Jim Nagy and Brent Venables, the head coach for Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is battling this out and battling out this recruitment for DeZephen Walker with other big time schools. They've got Nebraska, Kansas, K-State, all also fighting for his commitment. So it's something for Oklahoma fans to look at and recognize that they've got a good foot in the door, stealing this this official visit away from Notre Dame. But you've still got other programs to really look at, and Oklahoma is among the top 4 of his recruiting stage so far. And recently, DeMarco Murray has really put a press on this guy. He's a guy that's got he shows incredible speed and incredible agility, but he's also that big stocky guy sitting there at 200 plus pounds that he's got some power. So this is the type of guy that you really want on your team, especially if you look at some of the highlights that is out there. Look at Huddle and things like that, where he's got some of his highlights out there. Very impressive stuff from this guy. And so, DeZephen Walker, I think that's a guy that you want to push for, and especially being the only running back commit of the cycle. If we could get that visit, that commitment, because Oklahoma currently doesn't have a running back commit in the 2026 cycle yet, and Walker seems to be a good commitment to grab if Oklahoma were able to do just that. Oklahoma did have a running back commit, but ended up flipping that commitment somewhere else. And so this would be the first of the 2026 cycle. He does have official visits with those other schools. He already took an official visit to Kansas early April. I would have to imagine that Oklahoma would be able to beat out Kansas, but you never know. And he also has K-State on the schedule for June 6th, then Oklahoma June 13th through the 15th, and Nebraska gets the last crack at him a week later on June 20th through the 22nd. So we will have to wait and see how Oklahoma does with this recruitment of the 4-star running back, DeZephen Walker.